In this video we're going to make a wire wrapped coin. This design has a star type shape on the front and on the back of the coin. Perfect for hanging your lucky coin onto a pendant or keychain. I've chosen to wrap a New Zealand 20-cent coin today. It's got a really lovely tribal design on it and it's about 22 millimeters wide. These measurements are for this size coin, so if you're wrapping a bigger coin, make sure you add a bit more length on your wire. For this design here, we're using two 6-inch lengths of the 20 gauge wire and three 1.5-inch lengths of the 24 gauge wire. So I just measure and cut them out. Once you've cut all your wires, we can move on to the wire wrap. Then with our two 20 gauge wires, we start by holding them together so the ends are matching up there. Then we're going to find the middle. So around the 3-inch mark, we're going to then wrap one of our 24 gauge lengths around the wires there to secure them in place. Just bringing it around with your fingers, and then you can also work with your pliers to wrap it around both those wires there. We want these 20 gauge wires to be nice and close together, sort of sitting nicely next to each other. Bringing the smaller wire around the bigger wires nice and tight and tidy. I try and do all my connections the same so it looks symmetrical. I'm doing 6 wraps around. Using your pliers there to bring them all together. Make sure they're sitting nicely next to each other. You can see there I've got about 6 loops and I just need to bring those little tails across to the back side of the wrap. And then I can cut those little tails off and crimp them down nice and tight. You want to keep all of the tails on all of the connections there on the same side of the wrap so that they can all be on the inside. Now if you grab your coin and you imagine it's sort of like a clock face, it's going to have the 3, 6, 9 and 12. 12 is obviously going to be where the bail is at the top, and you're going to want a connection at the 3, 6 and 9. So just holding the wires on the coin to get the distance from one quarter to the next quarter, and that gives us a rough idea of where to put our connection. Again, with the same technique you used on the first connection, you're just wrapping that 24 gauge wire around the 2 bigger wires to create a nice strong connection there. Keeping them nice and tight and tidy, and the same amount of loops that were on your first connection. Cutting your tails on the inside and crimping them down nice and tight. You want to make sure that your 20 gauge wires are sitting flat, sitting next to each other as well. And I've got my 6 little wraps around there so I can finish off that connection. Just an FYI too, you're generally not allowed to sell jewellery that you've made with money. So just be aware there's some restrictions around that, but definitely for a gift or a lucky coin or a graduation gift for your child or a wedding year or something like that, if you can find a coin with the right year on it, it's perfect for that. You will see that the connections do slide along a little bit, so you'll be able to slide them into position there. The next connection, again, you're going to pop across about a quarter of the coin. Then for our third and last connection there, we're just going to use that last piece of 24 gauge wire and bring it around the 2 20 gauge wires there to wrap it the same as the other 2 connections. Making sure all the loops are together, and then you can tuck those little ends on the inside of the wrap. So So you're going to have 3 nice little tidy connections there, and you want to slide them just so they're sitting about one perfectly in the middle, and then the others are just on the sides of that one there, so at the 3, 6 and 9 mark on the clock. These will be slightly different depending on the size of your coin, but you just keep them in the 3, 6 and 9 position. These ones here are about the perfect size for my little 20-cent coin I'm wrapping. At this point here, I like to put a little bit of electrical tape onto my wrap. Just helps to secure it in place, makes it a bit easier to hold. I just hold that middle connection against the coin and then gently start to bend the wires around the edges of the coin. Just pushing it down, and then we can put the little piece of tape over the bottom there. Then you can start to form your wires around the coin there, following around the circular outside edge and bringing them up to near the top where the bail is going to be. You should have one connection directly on the bottom or in the 6th position on a clock. You should have another connection on the 3 and the 9 positions as well. Then we're going to bring our wires around the top and start forming our bail. You've got 2 sets of wires here, but you only want to work with the front 2, so that's 1 out of each side. So you want to bend those 2 at the back out of the way and just work with the 2 that are coming on the front of the coin. This part is a little bit fiddly, but we're going to bring those 2 wires together to form the bail. Working with just these 2 wires at the front here, we're going to grab 1 wire at a time with our pliers and just bring it directly upwards. Holding it nice and securely and then grabbing it with my pliers there at the centre of the coin at the top there and bending that wire straight upwards. Then doing the same with the other wire as well, grabbing it and bending it straight up, so that those 2 straight wires are going to sit next to each other when they're heading in the upwards direction. At this point we just want to make sure both of our wires are coming up nice and close together, and that the wires that are wrapping around the coin are flat and following the shape of the coin around the outside as well. You don't want them to slip on either side of the coin. Holding it nice and tight there with those wires together, we're just going to grab it with our pliers there, just above where they meet, and push the wires backwards. Then we can just reposition our pliers there to be sitting just above the bended part. Then we can bring the 2 wires back around the round nose pliers to form a loop there for the bail. Bringing it around and then between the pliers and the coin. So you do want these other wires right out of the way so that you can bend this one around that bail there. So I'm just bringing these wires around underneath the pliers, one at a time, just with my other pliers there. So just wrapping them around the bottom of the bail there, nice and tight. It's a little bit fiddly, but we just want to bring those wires around the round nose pliers and then around the bottom of the bail. Just working with them one at a time until they're wrapped around the bottom of the bail there. So just bringing that first wire around and then the second wire around as well, just so they're in nice and tight. Then you can cut the little tails off, crimp them down nice and tight, making sure they're nice and flat. Making sure the loops on your bail are nice and straight and together, nice and rounded. Then with your other 2 wires that are remaining, you can just one at a time wrap them around the bail as well. Bringing that around the coin and then wrapping it around the bottom of the bail as well. Still making sure that the wires that come around the coin are sitting flat and next to each other around the coin. Snipping the tails off and crimping them in nice and tight. Then the same again with that last little wire coming around the coin and then around the bottom of the bail. Cutting the tail off and crimping it down nice and tight. Now this part here is a little bit delicate. We are going to open up between the wires and we're doing it in between each connection. So there's going to be 4 parts that we're opening up. So we just start by gently pushing something into the little gap there between the wires, using something thin like a bread and butter knife or a little pair of scissors. Just be very gentle with them as you're pushing them open. I just use my scissors there, gently push them in and then turn them on their side, so we're starting to get a little bit of movement there. Then I gently pull each side out with my pliers so that we can start to form an opening there in between the wires. We're going to have sort of like a pointy part on each side that we're going to be able to fold around this coin. I'm just working my wires apart and then I'm sort of starting to work them onto each side of the coin. Once your coin is being held in there, you can remove the little piece of tape. Then we can work around the coin, just forming these little openings in between the connections to make the little diamond shapes that are going to hold your coin in place on each side of your wire wrap. Just work nice and slowly and carefully as you're doing it. You're not really pushing down, you're pushing apart. And then you can start to pull it out with your pliers. I'm just grabbing it in the middle between 2 of those little connections, bringing it in an outwards direction so that there's a gap in between each connection there. So you can put your little pliers in and open them, or your scissors in and push them open. And then with your pliers you can just bend each side down around the coin. So you're just sort of bending the pointy parts down to hold that coin in place. Making sure that those connections are sitting on the outside edge of the coin as well. You want to just bend all 4 points on each side around the coin there, so that it sort of starts to form a little star design on each side. Now you can take some time with your pliers to just go over your whole wire wrap, making sure that your bail is sitting how you like it and that it's all symmetrical and straight. You can work with your wires a little bit. And just make sure that your coin is nice and securely in place.